We like to tell ourselves a comforting story about cults. We imagine that the people who join them are uneducated, weak-willed, or simply foolish. It is a convenient lie that makes us feel safe. In reality, predatory groups actively hunt for the exact opposite profile. They look for highly intelligent, deeply conscientious people who are going through a major life disruption, a divorce, a job loss, or immense personal stress. Psychologist Ari Kruglinski calls this vulnerability the need for cognitive closure. When life becomes chaotic, the human brain desperately craves absolute certainty. Ambiguity starts to feel physically intolerable, creating an emotional void that begs to be filled by a clear, definitive answer. This is when the trap is set. These groups never advertise themselves as cults. Instead, they present a warm, purpose-driven community, promising a utopian vision and unconditional support. They flood the target with intense affection and validation, a psychological tactic known as love bombing. The victim walks through the front door entirely on their own, believing they have found a sanctuary. They have no idea that the group's real objective is to systematically target and dismantle their core identity. Breaking a human mind relies on a proven psychological framework, originally identified by theorist Edgar Schein: unfreezing, changing, and refreezing. The breakdown starts with the unfreezing phase. The group initiates what is called Milieu Control, strictly regulating every piece of information the recruit consumes. The leadership dictates what they read, who they speak to, and what they hear. To enforce this, members are moved into extreme physical isolation. Geographically separated from family and past lives, they are cut off entirely from external support. With the environment locked down, the physiological destabilization begins. Leaders enforce sleep deprivation, introduce low-protein diets, and aggressively gaslight the recruits. The goal is to induce a state of constant physical exhaustion, where individuals can no longer trust their own memories. When you can no longer rely on your own senses or verify facts with the outside world, your original sense of self fractures. The personality is successfully unfrozen, leaving the mind completely defenseless against the next step. Now comes the changing phase. With the original identity stripped away, the leadership aggressively overwrites the victim's worldview with the group's extreme ideology. Doubts are neutralized through thought-stopping techniques. Recruits are trained to use rhythmic chanting, repetitive prayers, or loaded in-group language to instantly short-circuit critical thinking the moment a question arises in their mind. Compliance is cemented through manufactured emotions. Leadership pivots violently between intense praise and severe public humiliation, crushing any lingering individuality into a unified collective. To seal the exits, irrational phobias are deliberately implanted. Members are taught that leaving the group will result in catastrophic consequences, incurable diseases, eternal damnation, or the destruction of their soul, making escape feel psychologically impossible. By this stage, the internal reality is entirely re-engineered. The victim perceives the predator's will as their own, acting with the conviction of personal choice. Finally, in the refreezing phase, new group norms harden into a permanent pseudo-identity, a parasitic shell that suffocates the original self. This artificial personality forces the true identity into arrested psychological development. The victim remains locked in childlike dependency, entirely reliant on the leader. These mechanics of coercive control are not unique to religious or political extremism. Psychologists see the exact same patterns of isolation, identity destruction, and trauma-bonded dependency in survivors of severe domestic abuse and commercial sex trafficking. Psychologists call this eradication soul murder. Tragically, the victim becomes an active agent of their captivity, sacrificing everything to defend the system that erased them. Thought reform has moved beyond the physical world. Executing these programs no longer requires a remote desert facility or geographic isolation. Algorithmic echo chambers function as a modern form of milieu control. They systemically filter out dissenting voices and relentlessly serve out content that validates the user's hunger for absolute certainty, slowly narrowing their worldview down to a single point. These online radicalization pipelines demand strict ideological purity. Step out of line or question the narrative, and you face the immediate threat of cancellation and total social death from your only community. The invisible panopticon now lives right in our pockets. The machinery of identity eradication operates at scale 24 hours a day, making anyone with an internet connection a potential target. Counter-radicalization efforts based on facts and logic almost always trigger a defensive escalation. When identity is fused with the group, an attack on the narrative is felt as a direct threat to self-worth and survival. The most reliable defense against coercive control is cultivating a plural identity. When you actively maintain multiple distinct roles as a parent, a worker, a friend, or an artist, no single ideology can ever claim total ownership of your psyche. Surrendering your absolute autonomy to a single charismatic leader, a high-demand group, or a rigid online ideology is psychological suicide. True freedom requires the constant, vigilant defense of a mind that belongs exclusively to you.